With a multiverse of possibilities, superheroes have faced off against all kinds of opposing forces. They have taken on alien invasions, faced doomsday events, their individual nemeses, and many have even taken on their own selves. I don't just mean in a philosophical sense, I mean in a literal physical sense. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. This is Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. Join me today as we count down the top 10 times superheroes fought themselves. Let's get into it. Number 10. Superman. In the comics, Bizarro is considered to be a character meant to represent the opposite of everything Superman is, despite looking extremely similar to him and with a very similar but somewhat twisted power set. Originally, Bizarro was created by Lex Luthor, but would later be given his very own world that he hailed from in regards to his origin. Supes has fought his dark reflection, Bizarro, in the comics on multiple occasions, even facing him in a Harley Quinn comic at one point in the early 2000s. And now the two have even squared off in the live-action TV series Superman and Lois, where Bizarro is also revealed to have his own alternate Earth that he hails from. Number 9. Jean Grey. Jean had to fight against the darkness within herself when she was possessed by the Phoenix Force and ultimately corrupted by its power after being taken in, brainwashed, and mistreated by the Hellfire Club. Fortunately, in the end, she would win out and would sacrifice herself in order to save the world. At least, so it seemed. In reality, this wasn't Jean at all, but a construct of Jean that the Phoenix Force had made, while the real Jean was asleep at the bottom of a bay, resting in sort of a healing pod, if you will. Jean, however, has also fought against her evil clone self, Madeline Pryor, who looks just like her and was created by Mr. Sinister using a piece of the Phoenix Force to be Cyclops, aka Scott Summers' perfect mate, after Jean's supposed death as Dark Phoenix. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about, maybe even more superheroes who fought themselves, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Harley Quinn. Harley not only ends up in an accidental fight against herself, but she also ends up in a makeout session with herself. Of course, this all goes down in one of my favorite Harley series that I have actually yet to read in full, and yet I always come back to for some of the most fun Harley Quinn moments, Harley's Little Black Book. One day I'm going to read this series in its entirety. I'm going to read every single panel, every single page, one day. It's a Harley team-up series, and in issue 4 we see her use Superman's balls. No, really, they're green and red science-y balls that she took from his Fortress of Solitude in the near future that basically allow her to travel back in time to an alternate reality known as DC Bombshells, which centers primarily around the time of World War II. Harley doesn't really directly attempt to attack her DC Bombshells counterpart, but she does get knocked out by the time paradoxicalness of their meeting and is then kidnapped by Bombshells Harls and her team of super gals, as they initially do not trust the Prime Earth Harley. And then later she gets to kiss herself, which I feel like would probably be pretty weird, but also pretty cool if you gotta do something like that. I don't know. Number 7. Wolverine. At the end of X Deaths 10 Lives of Wolverine, a Wolverine event that spanned 2 series, X Deaths of Wolverine and X, pronounced actually 10 Lives of Wolverine, Wolverine is forced to fight and defeat himself. However, this version of himself is no longer fully flesh and blood, no longer human, but instead has been fully infected and overtaken by the techno-organic virus which infected him and fully took over his body after Moira McTaggart used Forge's demutinizing gun to remove Wolverine's X gene, thereby negating his healing factor and turning him into a phalanx. At least, the techno Wolverine, not the Prime Wolverine. Sounds weird saying Prime Wolverine, not the main continuity Wolverine. In a final fight in X Deaths of Wolverine issue number 5, Wolverine is forced to put down his techno counterpart, defeating him once and for all with some pretty useful help from Sage, who has reprogrammed the Cerebro Sword to be useful in the fight against fully Phalanx Wolvie, also referred to as Omega Wolverine in the comics, or at least from an editorial standpoint. I don't know if I think they do call him Omega Wolverine, but at the beginning, when they're like, these are all the characters, Omega Wolverine. Number 6. Spider-Man. I mean, when it comes to Spider-Man, he's had to fight himself on more than one occasion. For this list, though, we're gonna focus on the time that he fought his clone Ben Reilly. Well, one of the times he fought his clone Ben Reilly. It's happened on more than one occasion, actually. This is also the time he accidentally hit MJ, but that's something that never really seems to get remembered in regards to Peter's defining sense of character. I mean, admittedly, Peter did feel really bad for hitting MJ, who was simply trying to prevent him from killing Ben, who he was beyond frustrated with after learning that Ben was the original and that he was the clone. In reality, of course, this wasn't true, but the test results of the lab that they were in had been tampered with thanks to the influence of Norman Osborn, so hence why Peter was like, "What? I'm the clone," and Ben was like, "I guess I'm the original?" Not true. This wouldn't be the last time that Peter would face off against Ben. Spider-Man has fought not only the clone versions of himself, but has also fought other more evil counterparts of himself from the multiverse as well. So there's a lot of times when Spider-Man fights Spider-Man, or a version of Peter fights a version of Peter. Number 5. Flash. Many people have worn the mantle of the Flash, and because of that, there have been times when Flash has disagreed with Flash, or even faced another Flash, or multiple Flashes. In this case, I'm focusing on the time Wally West became possessed by Famine, one of the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse, which happened during Future State. As Famine, Wally West's Flash had to face Barry Allen's The Flash and the other speedster members of the Flash family, many of whom are also known by the codename Flash, but not all of them are. Barry was attempting to rescue Wally when he faced him the first time, but as a result of this fight where Jay Garrick actually lost his life, he would be forced to accept the fact that Wally could not be saved and would have to be killed. But don't worry though, this was Future State, so that's like an alternate reality, and that's like an alternate future that probably ain't ever gonna happen. Wally gets to have his family back and be happy now, so yay. Number 4. Scott Pilgrim. Well, Scott Pilgrim might not be the most altruistic hero, he is the protagonist of his own story and is a hero in his own right. And he definitely kind of has like superpowers. He can basically punch you into coins, so that's pretty crazy to me. A bit of a flawed and sometimes selfish hero, but that is part of why we love him. I mean, we're all flawed, and inherently as people sometimes selfish, or at least self-absorbed. It's kind of what it means to be a human being. So it just makes him more relatable. Scott in his story, whether we're talking the graphic novel or the film, has to face Ramona's 7 evil exes in order to keep dating her. But even after he seems to have succeeded in this quest, defeating the final evil ex, Gideon, he must face another potential evil ex, the embodiment of his old self, everything about Scott that is negative or evil, aka Nega Scott. However, this fight is actually quick and painless in the film, as Scott and Nega Scott just end up talking it out, instead of coming to like actual physical blows in the end. And they even agree to have brunch together and hang out the following week, so it all worked out. Sometimes you fight yourself and you actually end up becoming good friends with yourself. How nice. Number 3. Raven. In a way, when Raven turned dark, she actually had to fight against herself with the help of her friends to save herself. Okay. Sounds more confusing than it is. I mean, it's kind of confusing, but it's not as confusing as it sounds. Raven basically had succumbed to the corruption of her evil consciousness, and because of this was known as Dark Raven for a time in the comics. Back at the New Earth continuity, to just clarify that for you. She crashed Nightwing and Starfire's wedding and implanted what she claimed were evil seeds in Corey when she kissed her, or at least like opened her mouth on top of her mouth. It looks like a kiss to me, so I'm gonna call it a kiss. However, it turned out that the spirit of the good Raven was also implanted in Corey, which would later be Dark Raven's undoing, or if you will, Raven's soul self. Eventually it came down to a fight between Starfire with Raven's good half and Dark Raven. Dark Raven was defeated and Good Raven was born again, being given a golden spirit body. Raven in the Prime Earth continuity has also fought a more direct version of herself, albeit an evil alternate one, and even though this version of Raven claimed that going dark was inevitable, the Prime Earth version refused to accept this to be true and beat her evil self back in order to protect her friends. Love it. Evil Raven's like, you're gonna become evil anyways, deal with it. But Raven's like, nah, I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna not be evil and then I'm gonna beat you. Number 2. Doctor Strange. In the film Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange ends up fighting against himself. That's what happens when you start traveling around the multiverse. You're bound to run into an alternate version of you, or a few of them. And either you're gonna become friends with them, you're gonna make out with them, or you're probably gonna fight. Or maybe all of those things, who knows. Main continuity MCU Steven and Designated Earth 838 Christine Palmer end up getting sent through a portal to a dying world where an incursion has seemingly already struck, destroying most of this alternate Earth. However, a decimated alternate Earth Sanctum Sanctorium and its Doctor Strange still remains somewhat intact. This Doctor Strange has been corrupted by the Darkhold though, which main continuity Steven actually kinda needs in order to travel back to his world. So the two are forced to fight it out. But it's not just any fight, it's a classical musical fight created using music done by Danny Elfman that not only pits Strange against Strange, but also pits Beethoven against Bach. What a classical battle. Number 1. Batman. Batman has had to face many different versions of himself. In fact, at one point, he has to face a whole team of evil alternate versions during the events of Death Metal. This is the team of dark multiversal alternate Batmen and women and dinos, who have been brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, one of the most evil versions of the character to have ever existed. Thank goodness Batman also had his fellow heroes and friends there with him, and he also gets the powers of a Black Lantern, because fighting this many dark reflections of himself ends up being a lot of work, even with all the experience that he already has of just facing the darkness within himself. This is that, but like tenfold, and then of course made manifest in multiple separate physical entities. So it's like if you had to fight yourself, but then it was a physical fight, but then it was like a whole team of you that are all evil in different ways. Sounds really hard. I wouldn't want to do that. I guess that's why I'm not Batman. Or am I Batman? You'll never know. Which superheroes would you like to see face themselves? Do you prefer when a superhero fights off against a dark alternate version of themselves, a clone, or just like when the conflict is more internalized inside them? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. I'll see you again soon, but till then, you stay nerdy, YouTube.